Satoru Gojo is an absolute monster. Activating his domain expansion for just an instant is enough to knock any human in the vicinity unconscious. And any longer than 0.0 seconds and they'll be robbed of their entire sanity, forced to experience every moment of their lives simultaneously until they finally die. As a result, the plans of many of the villains in Jujutsu Kaisen like Kenjaku solely hinge on getting Gojo out of the way because he's just the sole force defending the Jujutsu worlds. And so honestly, it goes to reason that if he were on the other side here, Jujutsu High wouldn't even stand a chance against their star teacher. After all, he is a special grade sorcerer, and a special grade is a sorcerer with such unlimited potential that the limits of their power are just purely measureless. For example, Geto here could create a massive army of cursed spirits to control. Yuta could copy endless techniques of other sorcerers, but Gojo doesn't even need the help of a single cursed spirit or anyone else, because Gojo could eliminate all his competition in the Jujutsu world without even trying. Now you'll remember that in Gojo's past, the Star Plasma Vessel incident was a massive turning point for him. Both him and Geto together were an unstoppable team of special grade sorcerers with the sole mission of exercising curses for Jujutsu High. That was until they of course finally had to go up against a true monster, Toji Fushiguro, aka Megumi's father. And even though Gojo's Six Eyes technique gives him essentially limitless control over cursed energy, Toji very nearly killed him and Geto. Now thankfully, Gojo just in time unlocked his ultimate technique, Hollow Purple, and managed to kill his future star pupil's dad. And at that point, originally like Gojo, Geto thought that sorcerers existed to protect non-sorcerers, so regular humans, but after this event, Geto slowly came to believe that humans were actually inferior, taking to calling them monkeys and working towards sorcerer supremacy. This is of course which led to the Jujutsu Kaisen that we know and love, or at least the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 that we know and love, with the two former besties Gojo and Geto having to fight against one another as Gojo upheld the values of Jujutsu High and sorcerers protecting humans, while Geto started working towards eradicating all humans. Which is where things get interesting for our video here, because what if things had gone differently? What if Gojo, as a result of this event, the most powerful sorcerer of this generation, also had become evil? And there are actually a few ways that this could possibly shake out, 4 to be exact. So let's look at how Jujutsu Kaisen would have played out completely differently if its greatest and strongest hero had become its most terrifying villain. Starting with scenario number 1. Gojo turns evil and Geto actually stays good. Okay, so in this very first scenario, we have a complete role reversal. In this one, it's not Geto who cracks based on what the two experienced at the hands of Toji. Instead, it's Gojo who breaks. In fact, let's change it right there. This time, instead of Toji defeating them both and then getting crushed by Hollow Purple on his way out, he defeats Gojo and is ultimately defeated by Geto in the Tombs of the Star Corridor. He does still manage to kill Riko, but this time it is actually Geto who kills Toji instead of Gojo. Now, this ends up resulting in a huge blow to Gojo's ego, but a victory one for Geto. And as we know at this point, Gojo's ego is about the size of a whole planet, so seeing Geto succeed where he ultimately failed would be really hard for him to deal with. As we know, he has never actually lost before this, so Gojo has a real mental breakdown as a result, deciding to break with Jujutsu High instead of Geto, who stays with the school. Nonetheless though, I still don't see Gojo developing the exact same kind of disgust with regular humans that Geto does here. In fact, he does love rom-coms way too much for that kind of thing. However, I could very much see him breaking with Jujutsu High School and going solo to do his very own thing instead. He is already too powerful to listen to the higher-ups anyways, but instead of leaving like Yuki did to ride around on a cool motorcycle and talk to impressionable young men, Gojo would be flexing his powers without any limits. As a result, the Jujutsu higher-ups would start receiving concerning reports of cursed energy output all over Japan. However, whenever their sorcerers would arrive on the scene, they wouldn't find Satoru Gojo. And they wouldn't find any cursed spirits either, just their bloodied remains and buildings completely reduced to rubble. Basically, what I'm saying here is that when Gojo would go rogue, I think he would be destroying cursed spirits with very little regard for collateral damage and causing tons of damage with his insane powers, even though he wouldn't be harboring malice towards humanity in general. He would most likely, though, target humans that he deems evil, such as the Star religious group specifically, and in this scenario, Geto would have to be the one to try try and stop Gojo. Now, in case you don't know, there are actually a ton of really cool fan drawings online where we see what it would look like if Kenjaku actually took over Gojo's body instead of Geto's, but that actually doesn't make sense if you really think about it. You see, Kenjaku would probably love to have Gojo's curse technique, but at the same time it actually wouldn't be necessary for his plan. In case you forgot, he actually needs Geto's curse technique specifically because the maximum Uzumaki ability is what allows him to take Mahito's idol transfiguration to then break Tengen's barrier during the Culling Games. Yes, Jujutsu Kaisen does get a little bit confusing sometimes. And so since Kenjaku still needs Geto's technique specifically, I still think that the story would play out with evil Gojo in this case defeating good boy Geto, with Geto's body then being taken over by Kenjaku. And this time, since Gojo isn't working for Jujutsu High, he doesn't get sealed away in the prison realm. Instead, he just gets to show up and wreak absolute havoc in the Culling Games, which would be great for Kenjaku's goal since the Culling Games specifically need to release a ton of cursed energy for Kenjaku's ritual to work. Now, in this timeline, Gojo becomes the all-time Culling Game MVP, racking up more points than anyone and taking out ancient sorcerers left and right. But of course, we can't just leave it at that because I still want to know what might happen if Kenjaku in fact did take over Gojo's body. And so here is our scenario number 2. Geto stays good and Gojo becomes Kenjaku's body instead. Oh, and well, first I guess we've got to figure out how Gojo actually dies so that Kenjaku is able to take over his body in the first place. And since the only person or curse around who's actually able to remotely be a match for Gojo is Sukuna, Kenjaku is going to have to get the King of Curses on his side. Well, luckily enough, Kenjaku's son happens to be a perfect vessel for Sukuna. Now, in this timeline, instead of abandoning the body of Kaori Itadori, Kenjaku raises Yuji to be evil. Together, they start collecting Sukuna's fingers on the DL, with Kenjaku feeding his son the worst snacks of all time to unleash Sukuna's powers so that his son can finally eliminate Gojo. Now, Gojo would be wandering Japan, teleporting here and there, eliminating curses, when suddenly Kaori and her beloved four-armed 20-finger-eating son would suddenly show up to give him the fight of his life. Suddenly, Gojo, despite his limitless curse technique, would be pinned to the ground. Because Kaori Itadori's reverse curse technique would use the power of gravity to pin him to the ground long enough for Sukuna to slice and dice him up with the Malevolent Shrine. Now again, in this timeline, Geto would still be good, so no one's really coming to Gojo's rescue here. Kenjaku is able to catch the evil Gojo off guard, and through a tag team operation with Kenjaku and Sukuna, they eliminate the world's strongest sorcerer at this point right here, but barely, because even these two need all their power to even actually hit Gojo. But now, with him out of the way, there's no need to bother with the Prism Realm, and nothing is able to get in the way of Kenjaku's evil plan. So he just goes, defeats Geto, takes over his body too, and then the Culling Game just happens without a hitch. However, now it is time to get to the real juicy stuff, because this time, instead of the roles being reversed with Geto staying good and Gojo being the evil one, Geto stays evil just like in the actual story, but this time Gojo is joining him in Villain Land, and let's just say it's not really looking that great for the rest of the world. Which brings us to scenario number 3, which is that after the Star Plasma Vessel incident, it's not just Geto who decides to defect from Jujutsu High. Instead, Gojo also becomes angry at how things are run and becomes evil right along with Geto. And really, with both Gojo and Geto leaving, there's now no one left to vouch for Yuta. You might remember that originally the higher-ups of the Jujutsu Society actually wanted Yuta killed because his cursed spirit Rika is so insanely powerful. And it's very possible that this is actually how things would play out, but more likely, if Gojo and Geto both exist as threats to the established order, they might very well ditch the execution and try to recruit Yuta in order to use his special grade status to somehow defend against Gojo and Geto's plans. Yuta and his classmates would be hard at work on their studies when suddenly an army of cursed spirits would descend upon Jujutsu High School. Panda, Toge, and Maki would put up a courageous fight, beating down untold numbers of curses, and when it seemed like the onslaught was finally dying down, they'd look behind them and see them. The BFFs, Gojo and Geto, ready to take out Jujutsu High now that their welcoming party was over. Now, of course, Yuta and Rika would fight to their hardest, however, just Geto alone was enough to almost take Yuta out, so the two of them together would absolutely wreck the hero of Jujutsu Kaisen 0, along with just about everybody else. Now, in this scenario, of course, Kenjaku's role in the story would also have to be quite different, since he'd be unlikely to take over either Geto or Gojo's body here. Much more likely, Kenjaku would use his abilities as a master manipulator to join with them, while actually kind of using them for his own purposes, just like he did with the disaster curses. Either way, really, an evil team up between Gojo and Geto is probably going to end up with sorcerers coming out of their secrecy. They'd start pulling away young sorcerers from their connection to the established Jujutsu society, and likely usher in an era of Jujutsu supremacy over regular humans, or I guess monkeys, as Geto would call them. However, even if he went evil, I just can't see Gojo getting fully on board with Geto's philosophy of hating all humans, which does lead us to our fourth scenario, and probably the most interesting out of all. Because in scenario number 4, Gojo and Geto both become evil, but instead of partnering up with one another, they still go against each other and walk their own villainous paths. Now, this would of course introduce a multitude of different factions that make the conflict of Jujutsu Kaisen a lot more interesting than it actually already is in the original story. Because while Geto still turns evil due to his hatred of humans, Gojo is going to turn evil just because he lets his immense power get to his head. After all, even though Satoru Gojo is by far the world's strongest sorcerer, he is still very much used as a pawn by the Jujutsu society. And so instead of listening to the old traditional rules, he would just do his own thing, go his own way, and really cause a huge fracture in the entire Jujutsu society. And so just like in the actual story, where he spends a lot of time using his power and influence to prevent the higher-ups from killing young sorcerers with potential like Yuta and Yuji, he would actually recruit them to his own side as powerful assets. And so surely other sorcerers who feel outcast by the major families would join him too, such as Maki Zane, who is basically treated terribly by her own family as well. At the same time, other sorcerers who are part of the big families would stay at their side, so this would lead to an all-out war between the elders of clans like the Zane clan and the Kamo clan and the young sorcerers who ended up siding with Gojo. Sadly, Panda would also remain on the side of the old guard, since the principal of Jujutsu High created him. However, very much unlike Geto, who still wants to just destroy all humans, Gojo would still want to protect humanity, but his newfound vanity and overconfidence would mean that he'd no longer do it from the shadows. Instead, he would then shed the secrecy of Jujutsu High and the Jujutsu Society and let it be known far and wide that sorcerers were responsible for protecting humanity from the terrible danger of curses. He may even take a cue from Yuki and aim to teach normal humans how to control cursed energy to prevent the birth of powerful curses that start accumulating from the negative energy released by regular people. In fact, Yuki would very likely be a powerful ally to Gojo, since she left on her own to try to rid the world of the curses free of the restrictions of the Jujutsu Society anyways. In fact, this was one of the suggestions that she gave to Geto for how to rid the world of curses, which accidentally then led him to the conclusion that killing all non-sorcerers would be the most effective way of eliminating curses. And since that is still Geto's goal, that means that he'd still be at odds against Gojo whenever it comes to battle for the fate of the Jujutsu Kaisen world. And in the meantime, Kenjaku is still lurking in the shadows, and in all likelihood unable to gather Gojo or Geto's bodies, he would probably still try to ally with all of the disaster curses, which would basically lead to an all-out war on different sides for the fate of the entire Jujutsu society. On the one side, we have Suguru Geto and his followers, such as Nanaka and Mimiko. In addition to the followers who could use cursed energy, he'd also have all of the curses that he was able to gather using his curse technique, leading to an entire army of cursed spirits on his side. Against him on the other side would be Gojo's group of young sorcerers, including Yuki and Yuta, giving them 3 special grades on that end. Also throwing into the ring would be Kenjaku in Kaori Itadori's body and the disaster curses, who wish to take advantage of the entire conflict to massacre as many sorcerers and humans as possible, and then pave the way for curses to take over the world. Kenjaku himself would also be taking advantage of the chaos, trying to eliminate Tengen's barrier, and he'd even possibly try to start the culling games anyway and use the fighting from this war to activate his ritual. And as the 4th party in this war, we would have Master Tengen and the elders of the 3 big Jujutsu families, including many of the Gojo family who wouldn't appreciate Satoru doing his own thing. This entire war would be insanely bloody, leaving huge casualties on every side, but there's only one way that it would ultimately shake out, I think. And so once the dust settled, standing over what was once Jutsu High, Gojo's 6 eyes would look out over the carnage. Principal Yaga and his puppet army would litter the landscape. Jogo and the other disaster curses would sit in cinders, and even Geto and Kenjaku would be dead and gone. Because with Gojo's side having 3 special grade sorcerers totally eclipsing regular lower ranked sorcerers, Gojo would ultimately win this war and would reshape the Jutsu world in his own beautiful blue-eyed image. Now, to be fair, of course, if Kenjaku was actually able to revive Sukuna as well, things might play out very differently. But as it is, Gojo is the world's strongest sorcerer, and there's not a lot that can stop him. After all, thanks to his insane power, practically nothing can even touch him. And it really begs the question, is he just holding back in all of his battles so far in the story? And what would happen if he really let his full strength fly? And the best example for this is probably the Shibuya incident, because what if he had used his full strength against the disaster curses instead of getting trapped in the prison realm? Well, you can find out all about that in this video right here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.